Welcome. This is an information session for potential applicants interested in applying for the 2022 competition under the discretionary grant program funding a national center for the development and dissemination of digital open educational resources that translate research to practice for building the capacity of personnel serving students with disabilities, also known as 325E. This information session will provide information about the notice inviting applications that was posted in the Federal Register on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. My name is Sarah Allen, and I'm serving as the competition manager for this program. I'm happy to have this opportunity to provide information about the competition. Today on the webinar, I'd like to go over some caveats and then share with you details about the competition. So on the next slide, please note that the intent of this presentation is to provide guidance only. The information contained in this webinar provides a general summary of the information contained in the notice inviting applications and the application package. Therefore, it's important for all prospective applicants to read carefully the entire notice, the full application package, and any additional relevant information that is available. In addition, applicants are encouraged to listen to a more general webinar entitled Applying for OSEP Discretionary Grants for an orientation to the overall application submission process. That webinar will be found at osepideasthatwork.org, the same location that will house this recording. I want to be sure that you're aware of the application timelines. As mentioned, the notice inviting applications was published in the Federal Register on March 3rd, 2022. The application deadline for this competition is May 2nd, 2022. Please note that the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. You must allow time for the application to upload, and the deadline is precise. Applicants should determine the corresponding time in their time zone and must allow time for uploading by the system. I'll say a little bit more about that later, but I do encourage you to apply early. The deadline is firm. In addition to the notice inviting applications, important information is found in the application package. The application package for this competition is now available at grants.gov and contains comprehensive information about the competition and also about submitting an application. First, you'll find in it a Dear Applicant letter from Larry Wexler, Director of OSEP's Division of Research to Practice. In that letter, you'll find important information about this competition, and also it highlights for you important application requirements. The package includes the full notice inviting applications, some important information about how the competition will be run, and also guidelines and information on how to submit using applications using grants.gov. As you review the application package, take a close look at the purpose of this funding and also the absolute priority. Be sure to notice the application requirements, the review process, and the selection criteria that will be used for judging the quality of applications. Finally, carefully review the general information provided on how to submit an application using the forms and the instructions for completing those forms. I encourage you to read the entire application package carefully, the whole thing front to back. All right, let's take a closer look at this competition. I'd like to share with you some program information, including the purpose of this funding and the absolute priority. We'll talk about eligible applicants and the funding levels that have been proposed. This funding is awarded under the Personnel Development Program, or PDP, as outlined in IDEA Part D. The Personnel Development Program has a purpose of helping to address state-identified needs for personnel who serve children with disabilities, including infants, toddlers, children, and youth, and ensuring that those personnel have the necessary skills and knowledge to be successful in serving those children, using practices that have been derived through scientifically based research and experience. The Personnel Development Program is a $90 million investment made up of several different grant programs, or sometimes called priorities. And we'll be talking about one of those more specifically today. So out of the PDP program, we have 325E. The purpose of this investment in particular is to fund a cooperative agreement that will establish and operate a national center that will develop and disseminate digital open educational resources that translate research to practice for building the capacity of personnel serving children with disabilities. The personnel that I'm referring to were outlined in the previous slide, including general and special education teachers, early intervention providers, related services providers, and of course, administrators of the programs overseeing the delivery of services. Eligible applicants for this competition are listed here, include state and local educational agencies, institutions of higher education, other public agencies, private nonprofit agent organizations. So it's a open competition. As you can see from this list of eligible applicants, the funding is intended to serve children K to 12. So what we don't see are lead agencies or early childhood specific programs. The funding levels in the project period that have been proposed for this work is a single budget period of 12 months. We plan to make one award that will not exceed $1.2 million for each budget period of 12 months. The project is proposed to last up to 60 months, 5 years. Let's take a closer look at the information for this competition. I'd like to talk specifically about the expected outcomes and activities associated with this project. We'll take a look at the application narrative, the sections to be included, and the aligned selection criteria that will be used to evaluate applications. And finally, the application and general requirements that need to be addressed under this grant program. Once again, please remember that this webinar provides a general summary of the information that we'll talk about. If you intend to submit an application, please do read carefully the entire notice inviting applications, and you'll find additional details in the application package. All right, expected outcomes. The proposed center has 7 expected outcomes to be achieved as a minimum. On the next, for this and the next several slides, we'll talk through those outcomes. This information is included in both the notice and the application package, and under each item, sometimes there's additional information, but let's just talk about the 7. First, to develop and disseminate innovative, accessible, digital open educational resources intended to translate research to practice for use in building the capacity of personnel to use evidence-based practices and to use those practices with cultural and linguistic competence. The intent is that the use of practices would improve results for students with disabilities, including those from underserved populations. There's a lot of content in that objective. So it's important to read the definitions and the details that follow. So first, to develop and disseminate resources. And then secondly, that those products and services would include knowledge-based teaching and learning tools, skill building exercises, and practice opportunities aligned to professional standards for the personnel that I mentioned previously. Number 3, it's expected that this center will produce resources that are licensed through an open access licensing authority. More information is available in the notice and again, the application package if you want to understand that better. Resources developed by the center should be responsive to learners from a variety of backgrounds and educational levels. Backgrounds including race and ethnicity, disability, and primary language across educational levels, ranging from perhaps associates, bachelor's, master's, doctoral. Take a look carefully at what those levels might be. Resources should be differentiated by role, perhaps general and special education, related services, administrators, and may be used across certification pathways and professional development opportunities. It's expected that the products and services of the center will be used to increase the capacity of faculty and IHE programs that build knowledge and skills of special education personnel to use evidence-based practices with cultural competence. We are looking to strengthen the learning of future teachers and providers, and in so doing, improve results for students with disabilities. Likewise, it's expected that the services and products available from the center will increase the capacity of SEA, LEA, and other providers supporting ongoing professional growth for current special education personnel, again, using evidence-based practices with cultural and linguistic competence. And finally, an expected outcome from this center is partnerships and agreements that support dissemination and use of the center's products. So we're looking for development of products and dissemination of products, in part through partnerships, so that the products and services are integrated into personnel preparation programs and associated with professional learning opportunities that will yield, and services that may yield verification of learning or the forms of credit needed to demonstrate professional growth and meet continuing education requirements for personnel serving students with disabilities. In preparing an application for this competition, it's suggested that the application narrative should include 5 sections. Each section corresponds with selection criteria that will be used to evaluate the applications. So applicants are encouraged to use these sections in organizing their application, knowing that this is the content that will be used for evaluating applications. And these areas are listed here. We're going to take a quick look at each one of them. First, the applicant must demonstrate in the narrative section of the application under significance how the proposed project will address current and emerging needs for instructional and intervention resources that translate research to practice for building the knowledge and skills of special education personnel to use evidence-based practices with cultural and linguistic competence, and how that will improve results for children with disabilities. Also, under significance, the applicant should demonstrate how the proposed project will address current and emerging needs for innovative state-of-the-art educational technologies that may be used in personnel preparation and programs, and to provide professional learning opportunities for personnel in practice. We're seeking to optimize course and curricula content in programs designed to build the capacity of personnel who will deliver evidence-based instruction, intervention, and services to students with disabilities with cultural and linguistic competence. Under quality of project services, the narrative should demonstrate how the applicant will ensure equal access and treatment for members of groups that have been traditionally underrepresented, how the project will achieve its goals, objectives, and intended outcomes by providing measurable intended outcomes and a logic model, use a conceptual framework to develop the project plans, and be based on current research, making use of evidence-based practices. Under quality of project services, the project also will demonstrate how they plan to develop products and provide services that are of high quality and sufficient intensity and duration to achieve the intended outcomes, including how the proposed project intends to identify and develop products, approach universal or general TA, and approach targeted or specialized TA. Finally, under quality of project services, in the narrative section, please demonstrate how the project will develop products and implement services that maximize efficiency, and speak to the development of a dissemination plan by describing how the applicant will systematically distribute information, products, and services to promote awareness and use of their products and services. We're looking to reach varied intended audiences using a variety of dissemination strategies. The next section of the narrative would address the quality of the project evaluation. In this section, it's important for applicants to demonstrate how the project will articulate formative and summative evaluation questions, describe how progress in and fidelity to implementation and project outcomes will be measured, describe the strategies that will be used for analyzing data and how data will be collected, provide a timeline for conducting the evaluation and assignments for completing the project. The timeline must include the data that would be available annually for the annual performance report, and at the end of year 2 for review of the process that's described in the 4th and 5th year plans. The 3+2 is what we call it. Finally, there should be a discussion of how the project will ensure that sufficient funds are dedicated in each budget year to cover the costs associated with implementation of the evaluation plan. Under adequacy of resources and quality of project personnel, in the narrative section, please discuss how the proposed project will encourage employment from traditionally underrepresented personnel, engage key personnel, consultants, and subcontractors who have the qualifications and experience needed, have adequate resources to carry out the proposed activities, and will ensure that costs are reasonable in relation to the anticipated results and benefits. The narrative should include a section addressing the quality of the management plan. And under that section, it's important to address how the proposed plan will ensure the project's intended outcomes are achieved on time and within budget. To address this requirement, the applicant should clearly define responsibilities for key project personnel, consultants, and subcontractors as is applicable, and also the timelines and milestones that will be used to accomplish project tasks. Be sure to allocate key project personnel and any consultants or subcontractors to achieve intended outcomes, and ensure that products and services are of high quality, relevant, and useful to recipients. The section addressing the quality of the management plan needs to demonstrate how the project will benefit from a diversity of perspectives, including those of eligible students, families, educators, TA providers, researchers, policymakers, among others. So who would you include, and how will they be used in the development and operation of the center? Please address how you plan to engage doctoral students or postdoctoral fellows in the work of the center as a means to both deepen the knowledge, skills, competencies, and dispositions of future leaders and inform the center's work. And finally, how to maintain your plans to maintain a high quality website with easy to navigate designs that meet government and industry standards. Under quality of the management plan, the project is also asked to demonstrate how it will ensure annual project progress is made in meeting goals, and that progress is posted on the project's website for public dissemination. Plans to assist OSEP with the transfer of pertinent resources and products, and maintain continuity of services as we transition from a currently funded center to a new award. The selection criteria that are used to evaluate each application are these listed here. They align with the sections of the application narrative that we've just discussed. You can see the relative points assigned to each section and that those points total 100. Each application is evaluated relative to the selection criteria. The application package does contain information on sub-criteria, so the sub-factors under each of these selection criteria. And I would just strongly encourage you to read carefully those sub-factors as you're preparing your application and consider addressing them under each of the larger sections of the application narrative. All right, speaking to a few application requirements. So in addition to the narrative and use of the selection criteria, review of application also includes a look at how you have addressed the application and general requirements specified in the notice inviting applications. For this particular competition, applicants are asked to address a number of application requirements, and we're going to talk through those on this slide and maybe one or two that follow. So first of all, in Appendix A, applicants are asked to include a personnel loading chart and the timelines and assignments to illustrate how you plan to manage the project. In the budget, you should show sufficient funding to attend meetings that are outlined more specifically in the notice, meetings sponsored by the department following a new award, for annual briefings, for conferences that are required. The application requirements include a set aside of 5% in the budget that is reserved for addressing emerging issues consistent with the project. So look carefully at the requirements for the budget. Application requirements for this particular competition also include speaking to your strategies for engaging doctoral students and postdoctoral fellows in the work of the project. We talked about maintaining a high quality website, ensuring progress toward meeting annual goals and ensuring that that progress is posted on the project's website. And then finally, assurances that you would be willing to assist OSEP in the transfer of pertinent resources and products as we maintain continuity for the startup of a new center or for the end of this center after up to 5 years. Lastly, I want to take a few minutes to talk with you about submission of an application. So as you submit, the process for submitting an application to ensure the information is received in a timely way. Once again, this is outlined in the notice and additional information is available in the application package. But let's take a quick look at how to submit an application. First, all applications must be submitted electronically using grants.gov. We will not be accepting applications by email. As I mentioned before, the deadline for submitting an application is no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on May 2nd. And please note that we strongly recommend that you do not wait till the last day to submit your application. Grants.gov will put a time and date stamp on each application and then process it after it is fully uploaded. The time it takes to upload an application varies depending on several factors, including the size of the application, the speed of your internet connection, and then the time it takes for grants.gov to process an application. Once you submit, there are still several minutes of uploading. It could be quick, it may take a little bit longer, but it must be submitted and uploaded, processed by G5 by 11:59 on May 2nd. So please note that it's a multi-stage process. It takes time, it's unpredictable, and there are no exceptions. With that in mind, we encourage you to apply early and specifically not wait till the last day. There is a suggestion for registering early, submitting early, and then verifying your submission is okay. So, please register in grants.gov. I would start doing that as you begin to prepare your application to be sure that your registration is in SAM and is current and up to date. There is a bit of transition as we end the use of the DUNS numbers and move to a new system. So please visit SAM and be sure your registration is up to date. Again, submit early. Don't wait till the last day to submit your application. Know that grants.gov will put a time and date stamp on each application and then process it after it's fully uploaded. So that process does take time. And then verify your submission is okay. Once you receive your be sure that your application has been validated, that the submission is successful. By allowing time, you could resubmit if you need to. Happy to answer questions on that offline. A few final tips to share. Maximum funding level for this competition is noted in the notice. Please know that the department will not make awards higher than 1.2 million for this grant program in a single budget period. There are recommendations for how to organize your application, page limits, spacing, and font that help facilitate the application review process. There are recommendations. I believe it's a 70-page limit for this competition. It's helpful if your application is submitted as a read-only, non-modifiable PDF file. That helps with submitting the application and consolidating the various sections of the application. It just makes the review process a little bit easier. So with that in mind, read carefully the grants.gov submission procedures and tips for applicants. That's found in section B of this package. If you have any questions, please ask. I'm the competition manager and happy to answer questions. Here's a few reasons why an application may be found ineligible. These are easy to avoid, and so we want to draw your attention. Sometimes we receive duplicate applications, and when that is the case, please know that the last application submitted will be considered, and the previous applications would be considered ineligible for funding. There are sometimes an application is received after the deadline. I've spoken to that. Applications are not addressing the priority as outlined in the notice inviting applications. It's not responsive to the priority. In that case, an application would be ruled ineligible for review, or finally, an application is received from an ineligible applicant. So those are all things to be sure that you check carefully before you spend the time developing an application. Finally, my name again is Sarah Allen. I'm happy to have had this opportunity to talk with you about this competition. I'm available for additional questions. Please reach out to me. By email is probably the approach that would work best, but my telephone number is also listed there. I want to thank you for your interest in this competition, and I wish you all the best in development and submission of your application. Thank you.